one of those things is the rooting interest with other games going on. We are going to talk about the rooting interest in the Eagles game later on because I'm going to have to see how much you guys are willing to put your pride out the window. But that's a conversation for a little later on in the program. The number one topic outside of Saquon that we will discuss is going to be the rooting interest, though, for games like Washington taking on the Cowboys, Green Bay taking on Chicago, and, of course, the Sunday night game, which is Detroit, Minnesota, vying for the 1 seed. The winner will have the first-round bye. We'll have home field advantage through the NFC side of the playoffs. So a lot of stuff to break down. We will in a second. But first and foremost, the Twitter poll. Sean, is it up?
Yes, it is.
Okay, of course it's up because it's brought to you by Dr. Avidan Appel of Iron Mountain Men's Health. What do we have for the Twitter poll today?
The Twitter poll question today is which team are you more concerned about the Eagles facing in round one of the playoffs? In first, the Packers at 63%, and then second, Commanders at 37%.
And yes, those are the two teams that you have the potential to face in the postseason. So let's get into that because we will continue to take calls, texts, everything on Saquon Barkley. We're not going to go away from the Saquon Barkley conversation because I know it's the hot thing that people want to talk about, but we do have to keep our sights set on the things that will affect this team going forward. At the end of the day, no matter what I say, no matter what Silvana says, no matter what Sean says, no matter what any callers or texters say, the decision has been made on the Saquon Barkley thing. Now we get to pick apart whether it's the right one, but there are still things up in the air when it comes to the Eagles' postseason setup. Not their seeding. They're locked into the 2 seed. But you have the 7 seed that's going to come to Lincoln Financial Field for your first-round matchup. And as it stands right now, that's the Green Bay Packers. Now, if the Washington Commanders win on Sunday, they will continue to stay in the 6th seed where they currently find themselves. They play the lowly Dallas Cowboys, who you just beat 41-7, but they do have to go on the road to play Dallas in Dallas. Green Bay, on the other hand, they could move up with a Washington loss and a win over the Chicago Bears, who
should be a given.
They've dominated the Chicago Bears for as long as I've been alive, the Green Bay Packers have. So do you look at that, and do you have a specific rooting interest? There are some people, and I'll listen to your point of view on this if this is where you stand. There's some people who say, I don't care if it's Green Bay. I don't care if it's Washington. Whichever of those two teams ends up having to come to Lincoln Financial Field next Sunday, they're going to get smoked. They're going to get the work.
Oh, well, I don't know about smoked.
Well, there are people
well,
who
the Commanders,
that.
I believe, would get smoked, to be honest, because they would have put 50 points up on there if Jalen Hurts had stayed in that game.
So hang on now. You're telling me that the Eagles have beaten the Green Bay Packers this year?
Yes.
On a neutral field, not on their home field, on a neutral field. So then they get to play them at home. And you're more worried about the team that you've beaten already rather than the team that just a couple weeks ago was able to knock you off.
I would be more concerned about the Packers because I think it would be more equal of an opponent for the Eagles. I think the Commanders, just in general, the Eagles really dominated the Commanders in their first go-about. It really was a humbling experience for the Commanders because they were riding high. Jaden Daniels, didn't look too great. And also, just in general, that Commanders game against the Eagles, if Jalen Hurts was in there, it would have been completely different. The defense was good. They got 5 turnovers. They weren't able to capitalize on it, though, because you had Kenny Pickett in. The offense was completely askew, and it's entirely different. You don't have to account for Jalen Hurts being a part of the offense, and you were forcing Kenny Pickett to throw the ball. So it was entirely different play out for that game because Jalen Hurts was not in there. Now, Jalen Hurts is still in concussion protocol, but obviously I think he is expected to play for the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
Yeah, he'll be fine. I think that the Commanders would be the easier opponent. So I would not be worried about playing the Commanders, and I wouldn't be awfully worried about the Packers, but I would think that it would be more of a closer game.
Yeah, I think you can say I would be more concerned with the Packers without anybody jumping on you saying, well, why would you be scared of that team? You beat them already. You're better than them. Like, I'm picking the Eagles over, I'll tell you right now, any NFC playoff opponent, I will be picking the Eagles. I think they are the best team in their conference. I do. And that view is not changing unless injury happens, and that's why the starters aren't playing Sunday. But I'll pick the Eagles over both the Commanders and the Packers. My thing is I would much rather play the rookie quarterback.
That's what I was going to say, the rookie quarterback.
I would much rather play a team that I think is lesser in multiple aspects of their team. Like, the Commanders are a fun story. It's exceptional what they've done this year, considering they brought in, like, veteran mercenary-type players at every position, and now all of a sudden They were vying for the division as late as they did. Obviously, the Eagles locked that up, but they're going to potentially be the 6th seed, or even if they make the playoffs at all and it's the 7th seed, that's a major accomplishment for them. But they're a cute story. Cute stories don't come to Lincoln Financial Field in January and knock off a team that was one of the best in football consistently in the regular season. Like that's not going to happen. I'm telling you right now, playing that divisional opponent at your place again, and also having that little added bit of, you knocked out our quarterback a couple weeks ago. We want this. We want you to come to our building. We want to end your season. Like, that's going to be
humble
a
you
victory.
for a second time this season.
Exactly. It will be humbling for the Washington Commanders to find out what postseason football is like and for Jaden Daniels to figure that out. Meanwhile, Jordan Love, he had some nice performances last year in the postseason. They played the San Francisco 49ers pretty darn tight on the road in that game in the NFC divisional round. I'm not scared of Green Bay to the extent that I think they're knocking off the Eagles if they come to the Link. But I will say that I have more faith in who Jordan Love is as a postseason quarterback because I've seen it than Jaden Daniels, who has played 16 games in his NFL career.
Absolutely. I think that is the biggest point, is that Jordan Love, we have seen, such as last year in the playoffs, he has that ability to turn it on and just absolutely just go hot and be amazing for his teams. Now, he does turn the ball over a little bit. That's always an issue. But I think they have more of, they have more than one-dimensional offense and team in general, whereas you're looking towards the Commanders, and it's a little bit different of a matchup. Eagles is essentially playing a team that's similar to themselves, where they like to run the ball a lot, and they have another dynamic back, which is Josh Jacobs. And, you have Jordan Love, not as mobile as Jalen Hurts. I just think that, in general, though, just looking at both these teams, I'm trying to think of, an offense and where it's, I think, more so always about the defense, right?
Yeah.
Who would the defense not be able to stop?
I mean, I think they could stop everybody. Like, once they went on the road to Baltimore and shut down Lamar and Derrick Henry, they could stop either of these teams, but there's a better chance that Jaden Daniels makes, what do we call a mistake by someone who is new to something? Not just in football, in any industry, a rookie mistake. You have the option that the most important player on one of these teams is a rookie who is prone to rookie mistakes. Like, that's as almost of a no-brainer to me as the whole decision to sit Saquon Barkley for health purposes and rest and everything to protect him ahead of the postseason in Week 18. But as we've learned, that's not so cut and dry to everybody out there. So I'd love to hear your opinions on both of our topics so far. 610-632-0975 is how you chime in on the show. You could call, you can text, and you can jump in with us on 97.5 The Fanatic and NBC Sports Philadelphia. Our opening topic, I need someone to tell me, realistically, that it would be a solid enough consolation prize, the single-season rushing record, that if Saquon Barkley got it, but you did not win the Super Bowl, it would make up for that. Because I don't believe that fan exists. And if you're telling yourself that, I don't think you understand. I think you're a prisoner of the moment. And I also am interested in if you have rooting interests between the Commanders and the Packers for who you could play in the first round of the postseason. For the record, right now it would be the Green Bay Packers. Most likely it's going to be the Green Bay Packers. Washington would need to lose. Green Bay would have to win in Week 18 for that to happen. So I want to hear this, though, because as smart as we are and as original as we are, Silvana, we are not the first people to come up with this comparison between the Commanders and the Packers. This is a conversation that has been had throughout the week. John Clark of NBC Sports Philly, he went ahead and jumped on the Mike Missanelli show yesterday, and he discussed the two potential postseason opponents for the Eagles in the wild card round. Here's what he had to say.
I'm not as concerned about the Packers as I would be the Commanders, because I think Jaden Daniels is much more of have a chance to have a really amazing game and win it with his legs and his arms. We've seen him come back multiple times in his rookie year. So I'm not as concerned with the Packers. They have an injury with Jair Alexander. I think they have the more talent than Washington, and I think it would be a tough game. But I tell you, Washington concerns me more than the Packers because of the X factor of Jaden Daniels.
See, that's so interesting to me because I lead into that clip saying it's cut and dry to me, and then John Clark, whose opinion I very much respect, he says the complete opposite, that he'd be more worried about the Commanders and Jaden Daniels. Now, I think, Sil, that this, if I had to transport, if we went back in time to this time last year, I think John Clark probably would have been a big C.J. Stroud guy. Because this reminds me of exactly that conversation of like, look how talented this guy is, the new shiny toy in the NFL. C.J. Stroud last year, what did he do this year? He was good in the postseason for a couple games. But I'm taking the guy that I've seen play in the postseason as the more difficult option every time. Speaking of prisoner of the moment with the Saquon stuff, I think people that are overly worried about Jaden Daniels are prisoner of the moment right now and not really putting enough stock into the fact that postseason football is different.
It is different. And I think also you look at how many times the Eagles were able to force turnovers against the Commanders the last time that they faced them, and also how well Saquon Barkley has been able to run against the Commanders. Obviously, we know that the Eagles' formula to winning right now has become run first. It has been for most of the games of the regular season, despite when, there's questions about the passing game, and Jalen Hurts had to shut up everyone real quick for a minute. Hot little minute there. But I think, in general, now when you have Jalen Hurts coming back and he's going to be back a part of the equation, it's going to look different than it did the last time the Commanders and the Eagles met, because I think Saquon Barkley is going to look a lot more effective, because then you're going to also have to account for Jalen Hurts. I think Vic Fangio has also done a very good job scheming against Jaden Daniels in general, but he is a very good scrambler. That was one of the big things that he really had some good success on. But that's just in general with very mobile quarterbacks. It's hard when you get that pressure and they just are able to escape the pocket and scramble for some yards.
Yeah, people see the 5 touchdowns that this defense allowed to Jaden Daniels in that Commanders offense, and they get nervous, not thinking about the 5 turnovers that were also forced, and considering that your offense wasn't able to possess the ball long enough.
How many of those were punts? Yeah, they couldn't even possess the ball long enough to get them off their feet for a little bit.
I'm not worried about Washington. I'm not worried, but maybe somebody out there is. So let's open up the phone lines real quick. Let's go to Nick in South Philly. Nick, you're live here on 97.5 The Fanatic and NBC Sports Philly.
How you doing, my man?
Doing good, Nick. Doing good.
No, it's Mick, M-I-C-K.
Oh, sorry about that, Mick.
Oh, don't worry about it. How you doing, Savannah?
Good. How are you?
All right. I'm just calling about I want to ask you a question. When we got Saquon Barkley, we got him to win a Super Bowl, right?
Absolutely.
It wasn't about we need him to break a record.
No.
Exactly. Records are meant to be broken, and Super Bowls are meant to be won. That's a difference. See, people got to get that out of our heads here. I do not understand. And I'm an Eagle. I was on the fence in the beginning, but I'm an Eagles diehard. Just well, everybody out here is diehard Eagles. And, man, I would have arrested him last week.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, Nick. Mick, would you have pulled him from that game when they kept him in against the Cowboys, where they would have gone up trying to get him to 2,000 yards?
No, I would have been took him out. See, that's just me, because I'm looking at it like this. People worrying about him breaking a record, but what is a record compared to a Super Bowl? We always, the city always bragging. How are we going to have bragging rights? Saquon won the rushing title, but we lost the Super Bowl.
They're going to be like, how many rings?
Right is that?
It's no consolation prize, Mick. It's not at all. I appreciate the call. Sorry, just up against a break. But that's the
He's
point.
Absolutely right.
It's no consolation prize at all. The Super Bowl is number 1. It's number 2. It's number 3. It's number 4. If you were to build like a top 5, it's every single one of the top 5 options. You can put the rushing record behind it. We're short-sighted if we're prioritizing that. So we're going to continue this conversation coming up. We're going to hear a little bit more of what the people have to say. And we're also going to bring up something I think is going to be really interesting for this week's game. There's some next-level thinking you got to have, not just to make something out of a meaningless Week 18 game that the starters are sitting, but also when you look at sustainability and not just get caught up in the moment as far as this season's concerned. You've got something very interesting for us, Silvana. So we're going to talk about this Week 18 and who's going to be playing coming up next. I'm Connor Thomas sitting in for Tyrone Johnson. Silvana Keller to my left in for Ricky Batalco. We're back after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic and NBC Sports Philadelphia.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching our YouTube. If you want to help us out, go ahead and like and subscribe for us. If you liked what you saw, go right over here to our playlists and pick out whatever you want to watch.